Serious, people who walked out of a job interview, why did you do it?
Pyramid scheme advertised as sales and marketing. It was a group interview. They served wine for beep's sake. They had obvious stooges initiating conversation about how great this opportunity was. I got very drunk and stopped being polite about it.
I wasn't informed about the evidently very strict building security prior to the interview. The front door was practically unmarked, and you had to swipe a card to get in, but there was no intercom. The elevator required a card as well, but the stairs didn't. However, no one informed me that the stairwells are locked from the outside, meaning I was locked in the stairwell with no way to get out. I called the recruiter over and over, and even called the front desk, but they just kept putting me on hold instead of sending someone to let me in at the correct floor. I ended up getting a call from the recruiter while still stuck in the stairwell telling me they would not be going forward with the interview because I was late. I almost screamed, and asked her as calmly as I could manage if she had gotten any of the messages I left for her letting her know I was presently stuck in the stairwell with no way to get out. She said she hadn't, and said it was too late anyway because they had gone with another candidate. She almost hung up before I could yell, probably too loudly, "Then can someone please come free me from the stairwell so I can leave?" They sent security to get me, and I was treated like a criminal as I was led from the building. I have never been so confused, humiliated, and angry in my entire life. I left them a scathing review on Glassdoor. Edit. Wow, this blew up. Thank you to those who said they're angry on my behalf. That's usually the reaction when I tell this story. This happened 8 years ago in Boston, Massachusetts, USA. I honestly don't recall the name of the company or industry. I was scheduled for the interview through a temp agency, and had really only been told the bare minimum. In retrospect, temp agencies are not worth it, and I wish I'd just applied for jobs directly. I was 21 and fresh out of college, and didn't want to make waves, so to those suggesting I should have called the police and/or sued them, I agree 100%, and current me would give 21-year-old me the same advice.
Applied for a software developer position for an online retailer. First round of interviews was a traditional technical skills and whiteboard coding session. Second round was a cultural fit interview with our. I assumed it would be an one-on-one interview with HR. It was a room with 20-something people applying for anything from legal to finance. They asked us to stand up, then crawl into a ball and pretend we were flowers opening. At this point I honestly thought it was some kind of prank, then I saw everybody around me doing it. I just said thanks for the opportunity and left.
It was a virtual interview and I ended it. The interviewer was a complete jerk, had an ego, and would make condescending remarks. Just told him that it sounds like he's not interested in working together, so in the interest of both our time, we should just end the call.
Sat down with the owner and the first thing he said was, "I don't hire people with beards." I said okay, got up and walked out.
I once showed up for a job interview in a suit and tie after answering a newspaper ad for a warehouse worker. Instead of a job interview at the warehouse, they had me get into some truck with one of the employees who drove me a few hours away, pulled over in some random neighborhood, and explained to me that the job was going door to door trying to sell cuts of meat to people, unsolicited. I told him this was not the warehouse worker job that they had advertised, and if he didn't bring me back home immediately, I was going to call the police and report a kidnapping. I was brought back to my car, but I was not paid for the several hours of my wasted time. Beep you. Pacific Prime of Cromwell, Connecticut.
It was a commission-based sales job selling kitchen knives. The interviewer pulled out a knife and it fell apart in his hands. I am also not a salesperson.
Showed up and realized it was a pyramid scheme that involved door-to-door sales. Edit. Thank you to everyone sharing your own experiences with these in the replies. I actually really appreciate reading your stories.
Applied for a teaching job. My current at the time job was at a school for people with disabilities. This new school was a school for children gifted in a particular field. I was headhunted when one of my students from my current school was accepted to the new school. The woman interviewing asked why I wanted to work there, so I explained the above, including student with disability. She goes, with the most disgusted look on her face, "We don't have students like that here." Should point out that I'm also disabled. Was not going to work out obviously.
Slightly different. I actually interviewed and was hiring by a call center that focused on getting donations for a variety of nonprofit organizations. I was desperate. It was on a Thursday, and I was told to show up the following Monday. When I showed up Monday morning, the entire business unit was completely empty. Like, stripped to the floor, wires hanging from the roof empty. When I was there the week before, I saw around 20 to 25 cubicles of people all working diligently, a manager's desk at the far back, and waiting area chairs with a table, all in one large room. To this day I have no idea what happened. I just know they got out of there quick in 3 days' time.
Showed up and the manager practically bragged about how the job offered no breaks for an 8 to 10 hour shift, and if there was a food break it would be 5 minutes max at a hip-height table with no chairs. She said that you'd be fired if you sat down even for 30 seconds. I'm more than capable of doing that. I did that every day at my last job. But when you brag about how your employees are so overworked that they don't get breaks or an option to rest their legs, it tells me all I need to know about how little you value your employees. I should also note that this job wasn't paying exceptionally well. Above minimum wage, but not at a level that was even enough to live on.
I once went to a job interview for a large welding shop, in the middle of a rainstorm. After talking to the interviewer for 30 or so minutes, he walked me out to the shop floor to take a welding test. The machine we went to was in decent condition, but was literally sitting in a puddle of water. The welding table's legs were rusty and not grounded well, and also in said puddle. Over half the shop was flooded. I turned around and said, "No thank you." Then proceeded to walk out the door. My life is worth more than $20 an hour.
I was approached at work, bagger for a major grocery store chain when I was 16, by a guy who asked me if I would be interested in making $1,100 a week. He told me to meet him at one of the empty businesses in the same plaza after work. He went on this long spiel about the melaleuca tree from Australia and how his company made soaps and shampoo out of it. Then he told me for $500 he would train me how to sell the products. I just turned and walked out the door with him yelling behind me that I would never amount to anything with my attitude.
A jumped-up security guard made me walk away before I even got in the building for an interview. I followed the instructions I was sent by the hiring manager, which was to park in the designated guest spaces. Security guard came charging out of the building yelling at me when I was barely out of the car about how I couldn't park there. Then when I raised my voice just to try and get him to listen, he started yelling at me for yelling at him. Eventually, when I got to tell him that I was told to park there, he called the hiring manager and started yelling at them about how I'd been yelling at him. Part way through that phone call I thought, nah, beep this, got back in the car and drove off. The hiring manager called me to apologize and asked if I'd come back. I politely declined, saying I wanted nothing to do with that security guard again.
It was for a management position, running a mailroom. Something I'd done twice before. All the standard questions were asked. I felt like it was going well. Then he suddenly says to me, "I'm hearing a lot of I from you. I'm concerned, because we are about the team, and not the individual, here." The hell, it's a job interview and you're concerned that I am answering questions you have asked specifically about me, with answers that address your questions about me. That's utterly nonsensical. I don't even remember how I responded, but I knew I didn't want to deal with his stupid semantic word and mind games, which I was sure I'd only seen the surface of, so I steered us right into concluding the interview, and I left. I also made a subtle show of taking back the copies of my resume that I'd brought with me.
They spelled my name wrong on their internal documents, all the while emphasizing how important attention to detail was. On top of that, they kept asking the same exact question about 12 different ways, which the answer to it was clearly listed in my work experience on my resume. This was for a thermal engineering position. They offered a tour of the facility while the person I was to work under finished up a meeting. I declined and left.
I should have. I stayed there out of morbid curiosity to see how low they would go, but I had made the decision I wasn't gonna work there early in the process. I'm glad I stayed. The last thing that happened in the interview was the CEO personally asking us all to promise that, if we ever make a mistake, the company will calculate how much that mistake cost us, and we will voluntarily pay the company that amount.
Owner of a bar told me in the first interview to never approach him with a problem because I wouldn't like how he fixed it.
Once interviewed with the company Innova here in Chicago for an engineering manager role. First part of the interview went well. Then I met with a senior manager there, and he talked about the kind of beep they did. After a short time, it clicked with me. These beep are loan sharks. I thanked him for his time and told him that I wasn't interested in beep over poor people, got up, and walked out the door. No thanks. I'm not going to help payday lenders get more customers.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to subscribe to Upvote for the best quality content every day.